Allan Blitz, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Mark?
I am well. I am well. I have to say thank you for being here, to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You are a musician, you are a singer, a songwriter, a photographer. You are also part of the LGBT community. Uh, let's start with music.
Mhm.
How would you describe the genre of music that you do? Let's start there.
That can be a complex question because I sort of gravitate in between a few different genres. For instance, my first single, Reborn, it has influences of pop and rock. My second single, Alien, is fully on a metal hard rock track. The third track is a rap rock song, which I released in January 19th this year, and unreleased works. I know what's to come down, right? So there are a few also like different things where it all comes together. Really, is that I am a rock singer. And when I think of like my some of my heroes and by the way, I'm so honored to be here, especially like as a queer person. And um, in speaking of my heroes, I was just connecting there, is for example, if we think of Freddie Mercury, he he had this ability, to kind of do the same in some ways, like do gravitate toward transition in between genres, sometimes something a little more edgier, more rock and roll. And then you have soft ballads. And it's funny because like I'm not trying to be that. I just can never, like it's not that I'm trying to be that. It's just the way that I've always envisioned, really.
Hmm.
It's kind of
And
something
it's
that,
probably what your voice lends to.
yes, absolutely. And um yes, I was, like in terms of my voice itself, I was actually trained classically. I was going to be an opera singer originally. Um, and then
And
what,
what, a baritone, tenor,
I'm a
what?
tenor. I'm a tenor.
Hmm.
I have a close friend. He actually describes me as a metal pop tenor.
Mm.
I was like, okay, that's weird, but it's, that's exactly, I think, what it is and what I am actually. So, yeah, I was going to become an opera singer. And then one day after school, I think it was like grade eight, I had a friend come over and he introduced me to a few heavy metal songs. And I was just so touched. I don't know if touched is the right word, but boy, I was just like really impressed and like it really made a strong impression in my soul. When I heard the singing and the guitar, kind of it all coming together. Um, and I know that, usually rock music is not really a genre that is too much associated with queerness. If we think of the,
Hmm.
like mainstream
Hmm.
outlets out there.
Hmm.
However, like to me, it only made sense because at that age, let's imagine like 13, 14, I was still like discovering myself and trying to understand myself. Um, and not at that age, also different time. I was not fully accepting of my queerness. Perhaps 5 years later than that, around 19, that's when I started. My mind and everything sort of started coming together
It's
mentally
like,
for me.
yep, I think
Yeah.
I'm gay.
Yeah, I think I'm gay and I accept that. And that's the thing, right? And that's the thing. But back then, it was more like, what if I am gay? And then, of course, like, because it was a different time, it was not a topic being queer was not a topic that, the mainstream media, for example, was really interested in or talking about too much. That around like, I don't know, 2003, 4, 5-ish, those years. So to me, it only made sense because I was experiencing a lot of feelings of anger. And I thought I found a release actually in heavy music where I was able to kind of let go of the anger that I had in me. Um, you know, Different kinds of anger. Anger for people that, would make jokes of me. I was dealing with bullying in school, of course, around that time too, as we do. Um, and People already making comments on my sexuality, and then myself like not being sure if that's what I was really. And I think that that's totally fair. Around that age I was just like a teenager in like 13, 14. But yeah, it caused like a lot of feelings of anger. Is like, and then at night my my music, as I would rest on my lay my head on my pillow, it would not be like something relaxing. It would be like heavy rock, and it just felt like the best thing.
Do you have a favorite like rock or heavy metal band or
Mhm.
a specific musician that inspired you, maybe vocally?
Vocally, yes. Vocally, by far, I think the one that inspired me the most, I would say, is Chris Cornell. He was the lead singer for Soundgarden and Audioslave. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But it's funny because I've always had this dream of, you know, okay, maybe if I have a career, 30 years of execution, 40 years of execution ahead of me, maybe one day, but in these 30 years ahead of me, I'll be able to meet him. But life happens, right? So unfortunately, Chris is no longer with us, but he by far was, the vocalist that really inspired me. Another vocalist that I should mention too, heavy metal singer Rob Halford from Judas Priest. And what I love about Rob is that he's also gay.
Mm.
He's also gay. Um, and it's the funniest thing because like when you see, the artwork and photos of the band in its early stages, maybe around late 70s, early 80s, it was like this guy just wearing leather, like
Mm.
and it was like
Okay, that's one kind of a giveaway.
and I'm like, my God, how the people did
He
not
would fit in at the
notice?
Black Eagle.
You would fit at and that's exactly it. You nailed it. It was like, how did people not notice that this guy was gay? Like, and yeah. So
But
just
you
so
wouldn't necessarily, because I mean, someone dressed in leather, it's universal, right? It's
yes.
like you wouldn't necessarily pinpoint that. But in terms of a group though, do you have like a favorite heavy metal or rock band?
hmm Soundgarden was one of them. So,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then Queen, I was definitely
Mm,
heavily influenced by Queen.
hmm
Iron Maiden is another group that you can definitely hear an influence in my voice from Bruce Dickinson. That's their lead singer, and especially in the vibrato of my voice, I use a lot of vibrato. He has a very dramatic vibrato. So yeah. But yeah, like I said, like Judas Priest is actually with Rob Halford. He happens to be gay, but the music is great.
hmm So prove me wrong. This is your current single, and
That's
it
my
it it
yes.
it, it also features a rap on it from a Toronto rapper.
Yes.
11 is his
11.
is his name, and he's
Yes.
also an ally to the LGBT community. Good for him.
Yes.
Uh, how did the two of you meet? Let's answer that question first. How did the two of you connect?
Mhm. I love this story actually because it's kind of hyper local, and we met in Kensington Market actually. You know,
Hmm. Which is
we met.
a unique kind of popular area in the heart of
uh,
downtown Toronto.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's
So
very bohemian.
it's very bohemian, and so every Tuesday in Kensington Market,
Mhm.
at the supermarket, there is what it's called the
Which
Big
is a
Fan,
club, a restaurant club.
which is the club.
Yeah, a
Yes,
bar.
yes. There is what it's called the Big Fam Jam. So the concept of that is there's a band on stage. Any artist can go up and either play with a band or sing with a band. So for a few minutes, people get a bit of a spotlight, and it's really cool. Um, at the time I met 11, I had already seen a few different rappers, and everybody was, like a lot of really great artists, but energetically, I just felt like, why is this not? It just doesn't quite match the energy of the song yet. So one night, yeah, he went up there, and I happened to be in the audience, and I saw him performing. He actually freestyled. He didn't. So he was like just you know
Making it
freestyling. Yeah,
up.
making it
Yeah.
up, making it up. He was
And
making it
so
up.
why did you think that adding a rap to a rock song would be a where did this idea come from?
As I was building the instrumental for that track originally, I sort of realized that he had the potential and some similarities with a bit of a Linkin Park kind of vibe, um, which is essentially a band that incorporated a lot of rap and rock singing at the same time. So, so as I finish the track, like I have a version that's unreleased and eventually will be released. That is just myself singing, and I'm just singing, not rapping. You do not want to see me rap. You do not want to see me rap. But So I have that version, but I've always had that thought in my head, always poking me like, why do I feel like this would be just so much cooler with a rapper? So yeah, I happened to so I put it out there for the universe, put the right person in front of me,
Mm.
and that happened.
Hmm.
And it happened. I As soon as 11 stepped um, got off the stage, I made a point to introduce myself, and
Hmm.
we exchanged contacts. I sent him the track, and he was in.
And was this was like after the main part of the pandemic?
Yes, so the track was finalized in 20 August 2022. Um, and then by then I already had the plan of already releasing some tracks, so
Hmm.
I
So were you
released.
able to go in with 11 like face to face and work together in a studio?
No, no, no. So by the time I presented the track to him, it was pretty
Mm.
much like, hey, I have this track already ready to go. Could you sing a verse? I told him a little bit about what it was. Of course, it would mean the world to me if he sang a verse. And thankfully he agreed. I was very nervous, to be honest with you, and I tell him that he he teases me for it, but I was nervous because I knew he was the guy that he matched the track energetically exactly as I was envisioning. So I feel like if he said no, I don't think I would have actually searched for another rapper. I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna release this by myself. The track is decent, but I just think that with his presence, it elevated so much. And there's also one thing that I really enjoyed, and I was just so impressed with 11, which it was his ability with words. So as I said, like he was freestyling, and but his freestyle, his freestyling like on stage was just another level to me. It was like, wow, I've never seen that before to this level. He's just so good with words. He's a wordsmith.
So, Allan Blitz, you are a singer, a songwriter, a photographer, a digital creator. Uh, Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Talk to me about your connection to the TSO and what is it that you do with them?
My connection to the TSO. Well, I am a full-time employee. I'm a full-time staff. The TSO is actually the organization responsible for bringing me to Toronto.
Mm.
For that, I was in Edmonton, Alberta, also working for another orchestra, so the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. I've been in the classical music world for about, I would say, 5 years now, after graduation from in university. And yeah, so during the pandemic, actually, my career sort of changed. I was a digital marketing coordinator for the Edmonton Symphony, and I've always been a freelance photographer and videographer. But when the pandemic hit and we no longer had concerts, okay, now we there's nothing that we can offer to our patrons. What are we going to do? Back then, the Edmonton Symphony knew that I was a videographer, and they just asked me, "Hey, do you want to, kind of sort of change what you're doing here and create videos? Well, maybe you work with a few musicians, and then we can continue to nurture and maintain the connection that we have with our patrons, with our audiences." So yeah, I just said yes, like right away. And I spent a year doing that. At the end of 2020, early 2021, that's when I applied for the job at the Toronto Symphony. Um, it's funny because I actually applied for a job that I didn't get. So I didn't get that job first, and it was a marketing manager position covering for a mat leave. And I didn't get that job, but I just felt like, but why do I feel like something here really feels aligned? Like something here really feels good. And I just had this gut feeling that they would reach out to me, and they did. So thankfully, they reached out to me, and I'm very, very grateful for that because it essentially changed my life. It opened the possibility and the opportunity for me to move to Toronto, which was already a goal of mine for quite some years, to be honest. And I was building up towards it. And it's funny because like it's one of those situations when you take the leap of faith, the universe presents a new opportunity for you. Like, you know what? Do you want to do something different with your life, with your tasks here at work? I said yes. And then you take another leap of faith. Hey, do you want to move to Toronto? Yeah, in a in an instant.
Mm.
Yeah, I Toronto really feels like home. I love being here. Really, really love it.
And so with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, the TSO, you do photography, you did do digital creation, those things, correct?
Correct. Yes. So with the TSO, I do photography. I manage the social media for a long time. I do videography as well.
Hmm.
Um,
And so who turned you on to photography in the first place? Was it your dad?
it was my dad actually, because at around 19, he actually, for my birthday gift, he gave me a camera. And I was not expecting that, like I was like, okay, cool. A fun little toy. So essentially photography became a hobby. Um, and you just trial and error. Hey, take a few photos, send it to some friends, and then you start getting feedback. And essentially that's how you kind of improve and learn on your craft, you know. Yeah. So I got to a point where people started, I guess, commenting like, "Hey, really good at this. So I was like,
Do you
yeah,
think you
thank
have?
you.
Do you? The term is the eye. Like a
Mhm.
photographer's eye, that sort of thing, right? Like for composition and do you think you have that eye when it comes to filming and composing your imagery?
Yes, I do think I do have that because at this point I am at I'm not you know I've been doing this for at least third 12 years. Um, what started with a hobby and always like implemented during university and then professionally with the Edmonton Symphony and with the Toronto Symphony. And essentially, for me, what my visions are as a photographer, I always try to um, capture the truthfulness of the moment so that you have the image and then you instantly know that it tells a story, like so especially with the Toronto Symphony when there's so much happening on stage, I always try to capture vulnerability. I think where there is vulnerability, there is great power and responsibility as well. Um, yeah, so I'm always trying to capture emotions. Um, and it's different kinds of photography because, like when you said composition, that obviously can be applied for landscape. Concert photography is its own beast because it's like it involves humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love capturing humans, like some photographers, they they like, yeah, just landscape or flowers,
Mm-hmm.
different. So there are options for everybody, and that's what's so beautiful about photography. And yeah.
Any interesting stories that pop into your mind when someone asks you? So, has anything interesting ever happened when you're filming or photographing the TSO, and maybe you fell off a stage, or somebody dropped a bow, or something happened? Any interesting stories?
um let me think of that. Yes, I do have a fun story, and what I love about this story is that it involves another queer person, Thor from Drag Race. Thorgy is probably the only drag that is more connected to classical music on a deeper level in terms of her performing. Um, so she's been performing with orchestras for a few years now. And she's created this show called Thorgy Thor and the Thorchestra. And during one component of the show, she's conducting the orchestra. So she's like, she has the baton in her hand and just like being sassy and conducting the orchestra. And I was photographing a rehearsal for this show. And so she was conducting, and I think the baton fell off her hand and flew
Mm.
and just flew. But of course, like yeah, it was just a funny moment when the orchestra just laughed,
And did you catch that on film?
not on film, but like, but I was, but I may have the moment like right before like the
Mm.
baton flew away from her
Mm-hmm.
hand,
Mm-hmm.
off her hand. Yes.
So
So yeah.
I haven't I have an interesting. I want to get your take on something, and I never
Yes.
know how to bring this up, but let's just go into it.
Yes.
It's like gay, queer, gay. Like, what is it? What word do you use? How do you identify? All that sort of stuff. A few years ago, I did an interview with a lesbian couple. One was a lesbian, the other one was bisexual. And
Mm,
the bisexual person was on an app, a dating app, and
mm,
had her profile say that she was bisexual. And so she started getting flack for that through the app, get off the fence, make a decision, that sort of thing. So then she changed it to queer. And so I asked her, why did you change it to queer? And she said because she wanted ambiguity. She chose ambiguity over prejudice. Ambiguity over prejudice. And I thought that that was so interesting because, on one hand, I mean, hey, it's her decision, it's her choice. I totally get it and respect it. But on another level, it's almost as if she didn't feel comfortable enough to own who she was, to put it out there. And, like she was getting backlash, and it's like, to hell with the backlash, right? And so she chose the word queer instead of bisexual. And I'm curious, in terms for yourself and using the word queer as opposed to saying, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay.
Mhm.
For me, on a personal level, I don't necessarily use the word queer, I use gay.
Mhm.
Professionally, like here on the show, of course. But for yourself, when you say the word queer, what are you referring to? Well, how does that reflect you as opposed to gay?
Mhm. I um grabbing on one thing that you mentioned, I actually enjoyed her perspective that it means ambiguity. Um, because there's a few things I think attached to the word gay and even bisexual, like you said. Um, because when I think of bisexual, I'm also thinking of a sexual preference.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I think, like when I think of gay,
Of
same
course, it's
thing.
it's it's the same thing.
Yeah,
And queer can be multifaceted. Does it reflect your
exactly.
political views?
Hmm.
All these sort of things.
Hmm.
Gender expression, your gender identity.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. So I think, like, but it's funny because, like, when you think of queer and
Because
bisexual,
and and
yeah,
and another thing is, and what does queer mean today in
yes.
2024? Like, does it mean that you have sex or you've had sex with the same s-
Yeah,
gendered person as yourself?
yeah,
Like,
yes.
it's a fair question to ask.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, it's to me, queer. I use it more as almost if I'm referring to myself as queer, I am referring, I basic for myself and my experience, I attach the meaning of it as to somebody who's part of the LGBTQ community. Um, and I use it in different contexts. I identified as gay for the longest time. And I think one of the things that I love about queer, the word queer actually is there is less of an attachment to the concept of gender, I would say. Like, because when I think of gay, I mostly think of a male, like, obviously we know that that's not true. I have, even lesbians friends that say, hey, I'm gay. Yeah, of course you are. Like that's totally fine. Um, but the first thought, that comes to mind usually is attached to being male. Let's put it that way. I think the word queer, what I like is that to me, it has more of a neutral tone to it in terms of gender. Um, and for me personally, in my experience, I've been a little less attached to, I guess, the idea of gender as being black and white. And I like it more. I would like to think it more as gender as an idea of energy expression. Like some days you may want to express a side of you that is more feminine. Some days I feel very masculine. Some days I don't feel so masculine. So I think, and that's the benefit I think of the word queer.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I think of gay, the word gay, I think again, like I think of more of a male. There's a bit of more of a male connotation.
Hmm.
Um, and it also denotes my sexual preference as well, that
Hmm.
I, as a male,
Like
prefer.
men. I love
Yeah.
men, like Eartha Kitt would sing.
Yes. I love
But
that.
you know
Indeed.
what I often say to that though? It's like
Yes.
I love men, but I don't
Yeah.
love all men because I'm not attracted to 100% of men.
Preach, preach, preach. That's
You
true.
know, I love
That's
men,
true.
but not all men.
And that's exactly it. So yeah, sometimes um for myself, I confess, like I find myself nowadays sort of using both in different contexts. Um, Especially like there are days again, like I really feel a little more feminine.
Hmm. Hmm.
There are days I feel more masculine.
Hmm. Hmm.
And my artist
And that comes
yeah,
down to your gender expression and how
absolutely.
you want
Yeah.
to express yourself. And my in terms of bringing this all up, what I see from getting a lot of, people wanting to come on the show and seeing a lot of bios and the word queer, and not necessarily like gay or lesbian or,
Mhm.
that sort of thing, but seeing queer popping up time and time again, it's always like, so, but how does that relate to you as the person?
Mhm.
So, that's why I like to bring it
Yeah,
up when I
absolutely.
talk to people like yourself. Here's my last question for you.
Yes.
What do you hope your audiences come away with after they've listened to your music? Maybe they've seen your work for the TSO, whether it's music or photography. What do you hope your audience comes away with after they've experienced Allan Blitz?
Music is always, when I think of that question, actually, is it's funny because I always go back to my 14-year-old self. At around 13, 14, I actually suffered a gigantic trauma, psychological trauma, and um, that related to let's say, my queerness, my queerness, and I found, the release that I was looking for in my music, in the heavy music that, like I said before, I would listen to right before bed. Just because I was not listening to Enya, it doesn't mean I had a teacher who used to say, "Yeah, Alan, I listen to Enya before bed. You listen to your heavy metal." Yeah, that's true. I do. So, like I hope that people find something that they can relate to, because every single word in my songs is something that relates to my experience. It's something that comes from my soul. Um, and I would never talk about a topic, if I hadn't experienced it before. I hate that, actually, to be honest. Um, I'm not going to talk about a topic that I haven't lived through, which is why I actually loved your question about and gay and queerness right here, because that's something that's been on my mind lately, and I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to discuss it right now. So yeah, I hope that they can take away something that they can relate to and find some comfort, even if it's, the music is heavy. There is light that can emerge from the darkness, um, just like I found. From photography, I just hope that they can look at my stuff and sort of
Hey, that looks kind of
understand.
gay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They hope they can look at my stuff and say, wow, this was totally a gay man that captured this. Look at all these rainbows. Just kidding.
Look at that baton fly.
Look at the baton fly. He just had to capture that moment.
Hmm.
The music, nah, just kidding. I really hope that people, like look at my stuff and they find the truthfulness of the moment. They find the emotions. It's something that I always try to showcase in my photography work. like people coming together, especially at the TSO and Roy Thompson Hall, which is our concert hall here in town. Um, yeah, so just something the the raw emotions. That's usually what I aim for.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Allan Blitz, well said, well done, well recorded. Thanks for your time and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark. So grateful that we found the time and that we did it.